This unique little 15-inch gauge railway, stretching some 13.5 miles, has a host of fascinating places to visit. The Romney, Hythe and Dymchurch Railway is not just another railway, it's the longest miniature line ever built. In the southeast corner of Britain lies the county of Kent. The towns of Hastings, Dover, Folkestone and Rye are rich in history. And not forgetting the 66-year-old Romney, Hythe and Dymchurch Railway, with the uppermost terminus at Hythe and turning loop down at Dungeness. Romney Marsh, with adjoining Denge and Walland marshes, make up a vast flat expanse of grazing land. Most of the area is barely above sea level, some well below. Carved by deep dikes, the landscape is dotted with the famous Romney Marsh sheep. In spring, the loud croaking of the marsh frogs, introduced from Hungary in 1935, is a familiar sound. Winter can find the marsh cold, damp and misty. Summer, on the other hand, with its splendid sunrises and sunsets, inspires one just to take a look. These marshes once had an infamous reputation as a haunt for smugglers, landing cargoes of contraband from France. A legendary character, the Reverend Dr. Sin, once masterminded smuggling operations from this area. He was also the rector of Dymchurch. The father of his flock in more sense than one, Dr. Sin often stayed at Rye, in the famous Mermaid Inn. All over the marsh there are isolated inns where the smugglers met, made their plans and hid the loot from the prying eyes of the excise men. They stored the contraband in the isolated churches of the marsh proper, possibly under the guidance of the notorious Reverend Dr. Sin. It all began at Brooklyn in the early 1920s. Two men, both racing car drivers, one an Englishman, Captain Howie, and the other a Polish count by the name of Zabrowski. Both enjoyed the thrill of speed and the love of railways. Howie had planned on the tourist trade and holidaymakers coming to the area to ride the trains. Count Zabrowski, who raced a car now world famous because it was called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, was tragically killed at Monza in 1924 and left Howie to carry out the project alone. The railway was completed in 1928 and it's best known for its superb fleet of 1/3 full-size steam locomotives. Most of the 11 steam locomotives are based on the express passenger engines of the 1920s. Green Goddess and Northern Chief were the first two, being delivered in 1925. Southern Maid, Hercules, Samson, Hurricane and Typhoon followed in 1927. The Bug, the original works engine, having no real use beside her bigger brothers, was sold to a fun fair. Being almost totally destroyed, she was saved by the RH&D, restored, and is now on show. She is steamed only on special occasions. In 1939 came the war. Hercules was armour-plated, and the army ran the railway. An anti-aircraft train was built, and material was transported for a pipeline to go under the ocean which was to carry a direct supply of fuel from England to the coast of Normandy. The pipes were welded at New Romney station. After the war, the railway, now much damaged, was handed back. In 1946, the line was reopened. "12 months later, the railway celebrated its 21st birthday with the doubtful assistance of Laurel and Hardy. Its route reflects the history of many hundreds of years, as the railway runs along the coast nearest to continental Europe, which has always formed the first line of defence against invasion. The history of the 5 fortified ports, known as cinq ports, cinq being French for 5, dates back to Roman times. Hastings, Dover, Romney, Hythe and Sandwich all make up this chain of fortified towns. 2 more were added later. That's Rye with its cobbled streets and graceful church, and Winchelsea with its massive gateway. The coast is lined with castles like this one at Deal, built in Tudor times. The Duke of Wellington died here. At Warmouth, Sir Winston Churchill flew his flag as Lord Warden of the Cinque Ports, and one of the locomotives bears his name. Now, diesels and electrics have superseded the steam engines as motive power for all of Britain's national railways. But there's still a great love for the things that were. Many railway preservation societies are operating steam-powered branch lines in narrow and standard gauges. And at Hythe, the platforms are usually crowded with tourists and holidaymakers. Soon after leaving Hythe, the traveller is reminded of the strategic importance of the area. The railway is laid alongside the Royal Military Canal. It was built for defence to counter Napoleon's threatening invasion. The trains wind their way past the many holiday resorts of the area before moving out into the open countryside. Soon, New Dyke is reached, one of the many drainage channels which has made the cultivation of the marsh possible. First stop is at Dymchurch. The station there is always a busy one, with the train to Hythe passing the one to Dungeness. Nearby is Lim Castle, built in 1380. During the summer, the service is intense and all the locomotives are rostered to cope with the traffic. New Romney is the biggest station and it's the nerve centre of the line, where all the workshops and admin offices are situated. It has shops where souvenirs and books can be bought. The main engine shed is also here, and locos sometimes change for the onward journey. For enthusiasts who want to look and want to discuss the glories of steam, this is the place to be. On again towards Dungeness, first past a wooded area, then open pastures. At Greatstone-on-Sea, there's further evidence of the railway's wartime service. From New Romney onwards, the track is single and serves a large holiday area. Now, the marshland scenery is gone, and the track is laid directly onto shingle, which is a characteristic of the area. At the holiday camp, there's a loop where up and down trains can pass. Along this part of the coast, holiday facilities abound, and whatever you want to do, there are always ways and places to do it. The line passes behind the houses, hopping across roads and providing the first views of the sea. Approaching Dungeness, the landscape becomes even stonier. This is the haunt of fishermen and those who seek peace and quiet. At Dungeness, the large loop makes it possible for the trains to continue directly on their return journey without having to reverse. Under the shadow of the old lighthouse is Dungeness Station, the end of the line. The lighthouse is open to all who care to climb its 169 steps. Today, the 66-year-old railway, its locomotives as clean, smart and efficient as they were when they were built, still keeps the faith of Captain Howie and Count Zabrowski alive in living steam.